Hey guys, I'm Jenna, also known as Ayla13. Today I'm going to be celebrating the milestone of 5,000 subscribers. I know I'm quite late, but I explained the reason for that in my last video. So anyway, today I'm going to be painting my first Kingdom Death model, the Twilight Night pinup. So many thanks to Nick Starr for collaborating with me and for sending me this model. Nick was drawn to painting by Rackham's Confrontation miniatures, and so when the company went belly up, he fell out of the hobby for a little bit, until Kingdom Death caught his eye again. Now he paints a variety of things like Age of Sigmar and Infinity, and he also does quite a bit of drawing too, so I'll link his Instagram in the description below. Nick started by priming in black and then applying a dusting of Clarke's white. I primed in plain white. Next, Nick base coated the pumpkin and the base in Mephiston red. Then he base coated the dress, stocking and hood in Nagaroth Night. I started by painting the cloak, pumpkin and base with Doombull brown. Then I washed this with Agrax Earthshade. Nick undercoated the skin with green grey. He mentions that he always does this when painting a pale skin colour. He also painted some of the armour parts with Abaddon black. Nick then layered Troll Slayer orange over the pumpkin and base, and then used Warpstone glow to paint the cloak. I highlighted the cloak, pumpkin and base with Doombull brown, followed by Scrag brown. I finished it off by mixing a little yellow into the final highlight. I didn't like how dull this turned out, so I gave it a wash with orange ink. Nick shaded the pumpkin and base with a wash of Seraphim Sepia. He then tried to darken the base with Null Oil and then painted Mechanics Standard Grey on the sword blade. I painted all of the flesh areas with Cardic Flesh and the hair and sword hilt with Blood Tracker Brown. I then washed these with Agrax Earthshade and highlighted back with Blood Tracker Brown. Nick went back to the base and brightened it up with Troll Slayer Orange. Then he added Fire Dragon Bright to highlight the base and the pumpkin. Also, he mixed Xeris Purple with Nagaroth Night to touch up the dress and stocking. He painted the cloth on the sword with White Scar, and then mixed in some Ulthuan Grey for the horns, hair and lantern. He used Dawnstone for the sword hilt and pummel. I washed the flesh with Reikland Flesh Shade. Then I painted the hood and arm braces with a mix of black and coal black before washing them with Nuln Oil. For the skin, Nick used a mix of Midland Flesh and Menoth White highlight, and then he painted the sword handle with Warmfang Brown. He then tried some new paints he had not tested before. He used Hexwrath Flame on the hair and horns, and painted the cloth on the sword with Night Haunt Gloom. He says this was a big mistake, that while the hair and horns look good, they don't stand out well from the cloak. Meanwhile, I painted the metal parts with Blighted Gold mixed with Cold Steel, and then washed the metal with a mix of Nuln Oil and Agrax Earthshade. I painted the eyes, and then started highlighting the skin with Cardic Flesh. Nick got some new paints and attempted to fix his mistake. He used Incubi Darkness and Warpstone Glow, and using a loaded paintbrush technique, painted the cloak. Now the hair and horns stand out more. Nick then used a mix of Thousand Suns Blue and Ahriman Blue to paint the lantern, the candy inside the pumpkin, and the pumpkin's mouth and eyes. He added White Scar to this mix to highlight the pumpkin and lantern. I gave the flesh another highlight with a mix of Cardic Flesh and Midland Flesh. You'll notice I painted flesh tones in the cloth areas. This is because the model is so sexualized that I was inspired to try some sheer clothing, which needs the flesh to show through from underneath. Nick went back and started highlighting the dress and stockings with a mix of Nagaroth Night, Xeris Purple and Genestealer Purple. Then, using Kador Red base, he painted the belts, the garters and the cord around her bust. I decided that I was unhappy with how the base looked, so I washed the outer rim with Rhinox Hide and black. Nick shaded the cloak and the cloth on the sword with Celia green shades. He notes that he originally planned to use metallics, but decided against it to save some time. He used lead belcher on the sword blade, the lantern, and on her armour. Then he touched up the armour with black. To paint the cloth, I glazed it with a mix of coal black, and then I highlighted it with Greatcoat Grey. It's a little sloppy because it was so hot in Australia that my glazes were drying too quick, but oh well. Nick used a Nuln Oil on the sword and armour, then he mixed Moot Green and Warpstone Glow for the edge highlight on the cloak. Finally, he used straight Moot Green in the eyes and nose sockets on the back of the cloak. I painted the horns, shoes and sword wrappings with Sanguine highlight, followed by Scorn Red. I then painted the lollies in the pumpkin and the lantern with Mouldy Ochre. I washed these with Agrax Earthshade, then highlighted it back with a mix of Mouldy Ochre and white. Then I finished the model by painting the rim of the base black. Nick went back and tidied up the skin. Then he painted in the eyes. He's unhappy with his attempt, but they are truly very small. He finished off with some Troll Slayer orange lipstick. And here are the finished models. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed. I'd like to thank Nick Starr again for collaborating with me, and also thank you for watching. See you next time.